Hi, welcome back to Embroidery's video number 3 of the February Stitch Along 2020. This is the design that we are stitching for this month. There are links in my YouTube channel to all my Facebook groups, my website to buy the pattern if you want to join in. There's also links to my Instagram. Everything you want to do to join in with this stitch along will be there. And if you can't find me, just type in Embroidery into the Facebook search engine, and all my pages and groups will pop up there. So far we have done the outline with the slip stitch, satin stitch, back stitch, and back stitched all the stems to the leaves. Some of you might want to back stitch the whole pattern, and that's what you'll be doing right now, and not adding any colour. But for those that want to add colour, I'm now going to colour in the small leaves at the top using an alternated back stitch. All my patterns are drawn onto my fabric using the Micron 005 size pen, because I always get asked that question, so I'm including it in every video I do. So I'm using my lightest colour green that I've chosen for my leaf colours. And so far people who have been following my videos will know that I have problems with my focus and this stupid camera. But I'm going to be using the alternated back stitch to fill in these little leaves. So I'm going in, it's a little bit more than 5mm, so I'll get a bit closer. Oops. About 5mm away from the last black stitch. And then meeting up with that last black stitch. Just going to tie off my thread. I always do at the ends of my thread, in case anybody's wondering, a slip stitch, a slip knot. There we go. And then I put the needle through the loop of the stitch of the, I say stitch too much, the slip knot, pull it down, and then tighten the slip knot. So then the thread is now attached nice and tightly to, let's see if we can get that focused. There we go, nice and tightly now, it's all secure, that's not going anywhere. So there's my first little stitch. I'm going to stitch a line of these stitches all the way down the middle of the leaf using the back stitch. So I'm going to get it as straight as I can. Doesn't matter if it's not straight, because it will just add texture to the actual final design. But roughly about 5mm apart, and then you go back to the other end of the last stitch you did, and you just keep going until you get to the tip of your leaf. I do apologise if there's any glitchiness in any of these videos, because I don't do technology. I'm an artist. I paint, I draw, I stitch. When it comes to technology, I blow up light bulbs, and I make computers crash. So I'm using my husband's technology on his laptop too, because he does videos as well. And if they get glitchy, if they need editing, I can't do any of that. I'm just really, really terrible when it comes to technology. Okay, so I've done my line down the middle of the leaf. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is halfway through the last stitch that we've just done, I'm going to come up halfway up its side. There we go, that's halfway in the middle of that stitch. I'm not touching the thread, I'm coming up next to it. And then I'm going to go back in halfway down. Oh, this is why focus is not my friend. There we go. I'm going to go back in halfway down the next stitch. and then you can see the stitches right next to it. So I'm going to come up, I'm going to come back up halfway through this stitch, not through the stitch, sorry, next to the stitch, but halfway along. So halfway along the next stitch, I'm coming up and then going back in to the first stitch that we did. Okay, there we go. And again, I'm going to come up halfway through, halfway next to the next stitch. So I'm not actually coming up through the thread, I'm coming up next to the thread. And don't worry about being right up next close to it, because the thread will fill in the gap. There we go. So the next stitch halfway, coming up next to it, and going back to the previous stitch. So this is the back stitch, but I'm alternating it so it looks like bricks in a brick wall. And there is a brick stitch which is very similar. And for the last one, I'm going right to the end, just to fill in the gap. There we go. So on this one, I'm coming up halfway through that first stitch, so I'm in line with that where the last stitch was. You see the dark dint where the stitch has gone in and out. I'm going to come up the same place, the other side of the line of stitches we've just done, and then I'll be going back in where near to where you went in and out on the other line, so that it's symmetrical. You're now creating a pattern where your stitches are coming in and out. So you're still appearing halfway up the last stitch. That's that line done. There you go. So you're starting to see a pattern of dots, divots, stitches, whatever you want to call them. So coming up halfway through this last stitch. Now you can see coming up halfway through this last stitch that there's a little bit of a gap between the needle and the edge of the design, and it's teeny tiny. So what you're going to do is you're going to come up and you're going to go back to the pen edge just to fill in that little gap, and the focus goes. There we go. So you filled in that little gap, and then you come up halfway down the next stitch and go back up to that last little stitch you've just done. Okay. So you just keep going, filling in your leaf space using the alternated back stitch. And if there's any little gaps when you get to the end between your last stitch and the edge of your design, come up on the edge of your design and just fill in the little gap. We don't want any little gaps appearing at the edge of our patterns. What I'm going to do is just pause the video, because I don't know how to speed up a video to make it go fast forward. It's much easier for me to just press pause and then re-record when I've filled in this green colour, and I'll be back to show you which stitches to do next. Okay, so I've now completed the leaf. You should have something that's looking very similar to that. Your stitches might be bigger or shouldn't be smaller, because mine are quite small. So on the design, we've got these little dots. So I'm going to be doing some colonial knots in black. So using my 2 threads, similar to what we did with the stems, using the 2 threads. Now, I do have a video on my channel that does colonial knots in more detail, but I will try and show you in this video as well. So you make a C with your thread, because the focus is going to go, because I've got my fingers in the way, but you make a C with your thread, you put the needle under the thread, go over the front of the needle and go back in next with your thread in the design, and then push it through. This gets quite fiddly, and I keep my thumb on top of the string to keep it in place as I pull it through. And then when you lift your thumb, you should have a nice little dot. There we go. So it's really hard to film a colonial knot when you've got a crappy camera that won't do focus. So I'm going to come up again in another area. Make a C with the thread, put the needle under the top of the C, thread over the tip of the needle and back in to the design next to where you came through. Put my thumb over the top, pull it through the other side, keeping my thumb on the thread until you've got a dot. So I'm going to keep doing these along one side randomly. Make a C, needle under the top of the C, thread over the tip of the needle, push it through next to where you've come up, thumb keeping hold of the thread as you pull it through, and when you move your thumb, you've got another dot. That's quite a big one. Pull it a bit more. There we go. So I am going to do a few random ones of those. And then I will be doing a back stitch around the edge of the leaf. And hopefully it'll be done. I just want to say, every time I pause the recording on my software, it carries on recording for about a minute, so I don't know if that's going to be all glitchy. So I do apologise for the glitchy areas. Please just fast forward through them until I can get better software. So there we go. I'm going to do a few more of these and then continue with the back stitch around the... Okay. So I've done how many dots I want to do. Now I'm coming up 5mm from the end of the leaf to do a back stitch in black around the edge. So 5mm away. Go back in next to the other stitch and then just keep going round. when you are going around a curve or a bend, just make your stitches slightly smaller to give it that smooth roundness of the edge. Because if you do them too long, then you're going to get long, straight, sticky edges. And we don't want that. Just make them a bit smaller as you go around the curve. And then once you're on a straight bit, you can go back to making them longer. There we go. And you just keep going all the way around the edge until you get back to the other end of the leaf. Sun's decided to shine through my window blinds and cause problems with my focus. Everything causes problems with my focus. I could blame the weather. I could blame what's happening on the news. I could blame my neighbours or just my husband for really crappy technology. So there's one side done. I'm going to do the other side and post pictures in the Facebook group. There we go. That's one side done. It's shining right across my table now. Look at that. Right, okay, so I'm going to continue with that. I'm going to come back with another video when we do the bigger leaves, because on the bigger leaves we're going to use different colours, and we're going to use the satin stitch and the back stitch in different ways to give more texture and colour to the leaves. But I hope this is helping you. If it is, please go into my information on the YouTube channel, or just search for embroidery. There we go. That's how you spell it. Focus. Just search for embroidery in Facebook, and all my pages and groups will pop up, and there will be the stitch along there if you want to join in, or visit my website to buy the pattern to join in with the stitch along. I'm trying to keep these videos as short as possible. This is the longest one so far. I do apologise, but it's going to get more complicated as we go along. So I look forward to seeing you on Facebook and seeing the progress that you're making with your stitch alongs.